after 8 p.m. We're well within Unlocked Chats, and tonight we're talking about young marriage and that conversation that you need to have, or that it should be had before you get into this roller coaster of a journey, because that's exactly what it is. And think about it. There's the process. You meet someone, you like that person, you fall in love with that person, you get engaged, and eventually you get married. That's what we know. That's what we've been told all these years. But we've also, been growing up hearing about this amazing place called marriage. Because from the people I've experienced, and trust me, the reason why I took that step as well to propose is because it is an amazing place. So I know exactly what we're talking about. So tonight on the show, we were going to break it down a bit, that conversation that you need to have, and also just find out, what do you need to pack and how do you need to prepare for marriage? So tonight we've got Dr. Bibi Petla, who is also a wife and a mother of 3 children. She is a qualified medical doctor that has her own private practice since 2008. It's experience that's chilling with us tonight. She also holds an MBA, and among many other things, she is also an executive coach, performance coach, and relationship coach. Doctor, good evening. Welcome to Unlocked.
Thank you so much.
It's such a pleasure to have you here.
I'm glad. Thanks for inviting me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
It really is an important conversation and a very interesting conversation. And I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, this conversation is actually for me.
God works in his ways.
Exactly. And for those that also want this journey of marriage and believe in the union that is marriage. Off air, before we even went on, some of the guys that you came with said, the famous doctor. And I saw you, I was just like, no, this is not the time to be called the famous doctor, and we know why, right?
No comment.
I expected that one. But doctor, I mean, you've been married and you're celebrating 14 years now. In fact, by November, I know you'll be hitting 15 years. Yes. How old were you when you got married?
Good question. I need to do the maths. But I suspect I was about 25.
Mm-hmm.
25. Yeah. 24, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, so now you know my age.
No, don't worry. Mathematics young shy, so I'm not going to try and calculate. But now, in retrospect, do you think you were ready to be married at that age? And I know from my mom's conversation that I had with her, back then, people got married at a really, really young age, 22, 23, 25. Do you think at the time you were ready to get married?
I personally was ready. So I've been ready since I was 16 years old to get married. And it sounds awkward, but obviously I was ready in my mind. But I still needed to understand, the details behind what a marriage is. So what counts a lot is your own background, what you know, what you're exposed to. That will make it easier for you to want this or not want this. So in my case, because my parents were always there, always did stuff together, so it was the most natural thing for me to want to do, to a point that when I finished my matric, I wasn't even sure what to study, but I was sure I wanted to get married, which sounds weird.
It really is weird.
Yeah. so thank God. Then my dad's like, no, you're going to do medicine. Thank God for that. Then I did that, but I'm just saying from a perspective that what you want is also dependent on what you're exposed to.
What are the telltale signs for you personally, besides what you are exposed to, that made you realize that I'm ready for marriage and I'm ready for this journey?
Well, I wanted what I've seen all along. So I wanted to be with someone that we do stuff together. We hang out together. We eat together. So I wanted that picture that I saw. The same way that sometimes you're exposed to the wrong things and they become so familiar to you, and you also want that. Unless then there's an intervention of consciousness to say, okay, this is what I've been exposed to, this is what I know, but I don't think this is what I should want. So that's something else. So for me, I just wanted what I've seen, what I've always seen growing up. So it was kind of easier in that way.
And that background, right, and that history of what you've always seen, did it influence you into looking for the right partner? Because I'm sure, based on how your father treated your mother and how their relationship went, there are certain boxes that needed to be ticked for you to say, this is exactly what I want and this is how I want it.
Yeah. fortunately or unfortunately, it always works like that. So, I mean, at some point I was engaged. I thought this is it. But I always got frustrated when things were too far from what I expected. Not from this person, because I knew what I wanted and I thought this was it. But when things evolved and it was far from what I wanted, then I was like, okay, I don't think this is going to work for me. To a point that that person says, I'm not your dad. Then you realize that, okay, it's either this one is not the one, or I must change what I want.
Sure. And is it that at that point where you realize, with that, I need to, before I get married, go through counseling with this person that you have chosen?
Yeah, so to be specific with me, I never really went for counseling. My parents were those very strict parents, so I couldn't even discuss with them about relationships. We could talk about anything, but they said they don't want to hear anything about relationships. I'm too young for this. I must just go to school, study, failing which I will be in danger. No, I'm just joking. I'm exaggerating, but it's something to that effect. So
sounds familiar.
So basically, that was the only gap for me, because I couldn't sit down with them and say, okay, how do I really know this is it? Am I on the right track? So I kind of had to fiddle my way around and kind of use my own sense of, this is feeling right for me. This is going to work for me or not. So I had to, for me, I didn't go through counseling, which is important, by the way, because it prepares, because in your mind you think you know what you want. In your mind you think you are ready. Until you get in and no one prepared you for this and that, and then they tell you this is standard, this is how it works. So that is a conversation that more and more people should be having. That's why I even said to you, this is a very important discussion that you're even thinking about. Discussing something like this is critical, because for every relationship, it's dependent on the foundation of the relationship. So how many of us actually go through premarital counseling for those that want to get married? Very few. Then you get in, your foundation was not solid, and then you're like, marriage is bad. But the problem was actually the foundation. There's nothing wrong with marriage. The uncommunicated expectations. You had your own things, I had my own things, I didn't tell you, didn't tell me. And then when the reality hits, you're like, I didn't sign up for this.
This is not what I wanted.
Yeah, like, where's the romance?
Yes.
And the wine.
And the good times, and the Sundays are for lovers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then now it's like, you have to deal with, some basic issues like, okay, this one snores.
Ish.
I didn't think this person could fight, like, okay, like some silly things. Okay, when they meet with friends, we're talking both ways, remember? When they meet with friends, I didn't know they'll behave like this. When they're with their relatives, I didn't know this is how they change. So you discover things along the way, because there wasn't actually communicated set or foundation to say, what do we think we are doing? What are we getting ourselves into? What are we thinking we're going to experience or to create in this thing? So we don't communicate about those things.
What would you say is the difference between the conversation that one would have with their parents, if you're fortunate enough to have the marriage conversation with your parents, versus marriage counseling? Because I've noticed that sometimes the conversation you have with your parents, it can either be the toxicity of marriage or just the good times of marriage. And I'm saying this because there are parents who are listening right now who have kids, and I think that conversation should start from home. What's the conversation that I have with my kid to prepare them as a parent? Also, bearing in mind that there's a respect element that is in play.
It's a very complex question. It would be very difficult to answer it at once, because basically, as a parent, your own perspective is going to influence the information or the advice that you're going to give. So if you are traumatized, most likely, when I say you hate this, you don't want this. If you had like fun, it's beautiful, of course you're going to say, oh, it's beautiful. So sometimes as parents, we also don't give our children a practical perspective, because you want to protect them sometimes. And unfortunately, that protection makes them vulnerable, because they don't know the other side of what really goes on, what you have to suck up, what you have to go through to make sure that they think things are fine when they know that things are not really fine. So it's difficult to know. Also, coming to the marriage counselors, some marriage counselors themselves have issues. So now, which marriage counselor do you choose? Are you going to choose one that is more towards Christian based or more on a spirituality basis? So it's quite a complex matter. So eventually you will have to somewhere find an educated or an informed counselor, so to say, or you hope your parent is in a stable place. Because remember, parents are traumatized as much as kids. Sometimes we think my mother or my father knows everything, they're perfect, but they're human beings, so they have their own issues. So have your parents worked on their own issues before they can engage you? Because otherwise they just reflect their own issues onto you. Then you're going to recreate what they've lived through.
And look, that toxicity, if it comes from the parent, it can get to you to a point where you are scared of marriage. I'm in that position where my mom's experience of marriage is one that every time I tell her about this intent and this union that I want to get into, it's always a little bit apprehensive. Yeah, be careful, mtanami. Hey, experience in this also. Hey, mtanami. So how do you convince your parents, or is there even a need for you to convince them after you've decided that this is the path that I want to take for my life?
Yeah, you don't have to convince your parents, which is another topic for another day. Because part of you feeling like you need to convince your parents also is going to come with the burden that you'll always have to convince them along the relationship all the time. Once you're an adult, you should know that now you should start accounting for you. Because if you always need their approval, you'll have to need it all the time. So it's a matter of you have to work on yourself. Once you feel like you've got clarity, you've worked on yourself, you'll never be 100%, but have a level of saying, I think I've done my basic workup for me before I engage with somebody else, so that by the time we get into this thing, we can hold it down. Then your parents and friends become secondary support. They can never be primary, which is another challenge in a lot of marriages, because the parents remain primary, advisors and decision makers, which also creates that toxicity in a relationship. So eventually what I'm saying is, you have to take responsibility for you. You're a man, you're a woman. If you think this is what you want, work on you, then communicate with your partner. That's where the counseling comes in. Allow somebody else to help you to reflect, because sometimes you might just dream between the two of you, just dream and talk about fantasies, and it's not even real. But when you get a third person who's at least trained, it's better, because they can also help you to reflect and give you guidelines, not necessarily their own experience, but to say, according to human physiology, this is what builds relationships. This is what keeps the brain and the mind in a stable place. Do you understand what is the purpose of marriage? What are you hoping to achieve? Do you think you're ready for this? So that type of honest reflection, but after you understand that you work on yourself, you are going in as an individual before you're somebody's husband or wife. And beyond that, then it's easier, because you understand that, we are two different people who are trying to create something. And what it means is, there'll always be now and then disagreements. You don't see this eye to eye, but if you are prepared, at least you can negotiate. You can cool yourself down, come back and say, okay, let's go back to the vision.
What's the process of marriage counseling?
Marriage counseling is, it's like any other engagement, right? You have to say, I want it. That's the first thing. So if somebody say, go to marriage counseling, no, I'm not going. So obviously it's a problem, because you're forced to get into this thing. So like with any help, you have to want the help. Once you want the help, it means you're going to be willing to work on the process, with the process. So you get to whoever is going to be helping you with this, they engage you, and you hope that the person that is advising you is also a reasonably seasoned person in their area of expertise, so to say, so that they advise you in a way that, you want advice that doesn't want you to be too dependent on them, that if they're not there, you fall apart, you can't do anything. So you want type of advisor that allows you guys to understand that it's between the two of you. But when you need help, come. Not the type of advisor that says, guys, I need to see you every week to make sure that you can remain holy. This thing can be blessed. This thing can continue working, because then you can't do anything. So your independent thinking goes away, your authenticity goes away, what your dreams and wishes also goes away, because you've outsourced the thinking, you've outsourced the planning to somebody else. So you want a bit of freedom, responsibility with freedom, if I can put it that
Mm,
way.
mm.
So somebody who says, guys, this is where I can help, but you must understand the work is on you.
Mm.
So they give you that responsibility, but support also.
And before the marriage counseling process, do we need to know everything about each other before getting married or deciding to get to that point and that journey? Do I need to know how much my partner earns? Do I need to know her color of her underwear? Do I need to know the color she likes? Do I need to know everything about that? And is that a sign that now you are ready to get married to this person?
Not the issue of marriage is an issue on its own. So it's a discussion that you have when you say to each other, do you want to get married, yes or no? Why do we want to get married? It mustn't be by default. Like, we enjoy each other's company so much. The breakfasts are always amazing.
We've been together for many years.
Together for 10 years. Let's just do this thing. So it should actually be something like, I want to get married. I'm looking for somebody who's ready for marriage. Because that is exactly the thing that disappoints many of us. You want to get married by default. There was no planning, there was no intention, there was no preparation, there was nothing. Just because you enjoy each other's word, I don't know, something.
Yeah, company.
No, I think I feel you, let's do this. It's not going to work. So it's a bit more work, just like with any business.
I was about to say that it sounds like a business.
It's a business plan, so there must be intention from the start. So sometimes we're actually scared to tell somebody that, look, I want to get married from the start, because you're thinking, if I tell him or her, I want to get married, they're going to think I'm clingy. But then you're not with the right person. You should be looking for somebody who also wants to be married, because if you're going to convince someone to get married to you, they might cooperate because they enjoy this and that, but then the relationship is going to struggle a lot because there was no preparation, there was no intention. This was not the original plan. It's by default. Or I'm pregnant, let's get married. It's not necessarily a good reason to get married. Yes, it's going to be good for parenting, but you'll notice that because you are two human beings, it's going to be a hurdle in the parenting itself because you're going to be in each other's faces, and somebody's like, no, but now it feels like you're controlling me. Just because we're married, you think we're going to be together all the time. Like, okay, where are you supposed to be? What are you supposed to be doing? Like, no, I've got friends. Like, okay, you're not ready for marriage.
I had a conversation with a guy in Bulugwane who was fixing my car, and we had marriage conversations, right? He's been married for about 6 years. And one thing he said to me, and I want to hear your thoughts on this. He said, you don't marry the person that you love, you marry a partner. What are your thoughts on that? And it's not the first time I hear about this. I was also watching a video on TikTok where a guy was saying that you don't marry your type, you marry a partner.
I think just from what you're saying, people use so much jargon just to confuse everyone. Because I can say, what is love then? What is love then? Because people confuse feelings with love. There's feelings, then there's love. And there's only one type of love. That is what the Bible defines. Whether you say, I believe in the Bible or I don't. But love or true love is primarily based on servanthood, serving the other person. Love is how it's described in 1 Corinthians 13. The patience, the kindness, the compassion. So meaning you don't have to have feelings for someone for you to want to get married to them. So I think the big thing that confuses many people is you're using feelings and you've got like a gauge on the feelings. Like, I think the gauge meter is up, let's get married. It's not going to sustain the relationship because most of the relationship, those romantic feelings will be gone because there are so many responsibilities that you have to engage on. So feelings are the least things that should be concerned of. So that's why marriage has to be intentional. So you should understand that marriage is basically a partnership. It is a partnership. Because everybody else who has gotten married because they have feelings for someone, they enjoy their company, they usually struggle because then they can't deal with the realities of marriage. So marriage is a partnership. Marriage is about serving each other. It's understanding that, okay, I'm going to compromise sometimes for this person will do this for me. This person might feel like doing something that I won't feel like doing, but because it's important to them, I'm also going to show up for them.
Mm.
So most people don't understand that the service part of marriage, and the partnership part of it comes in where you understand that there's money involved here. There's an estate issue. It's not like, I like you, like most of us really, we take this so casually. There's an estate issue in terms of, if somebody dies, what happens to everything that has been worked for here? Where is it going? Is the the planning done around death? That's how intense. It's like with any business. That's how intense it is. That if one of us dies, what happens to everything that we own? So we're already planning death already in a marriage, and we're talking about, okay, coming to money. How are we going to work with this money? So are we going to have separate accounts? Are we going to put the monies together? What is the plan around money? Are we going to have like the independent? Because it also counts, of course. Is it a business? Are you employed? Because those dynamics count, of course. But we should be thinking about such intense things, like you're thinking money, you're thinking children. Remember, children are linked to legacy. Because children always carry the prolonged life from this generation to the next. So those are serious conversations. So just from this, you hear that there's no time for romance.
And when do you have those conversations? Do you have them before or in marriage, or when the issues start to arise?
That's why I'm using the business plan. With business planning, you do everything before it starts. The funding is not coming until the business plan is clear, and this thing is going to be profitable. The chances of success are high. So if you go to the bank, we need funding for this. They're like, okay, let's see this. Okay, but you haven't factored this. You haven't factored this. This is important for us before we give you the funding, because otherwise we're not going to get a return on investment in this. So what it means is you must have planned everything before it happens. As much as you don't know how things will go, but planning goes a long way compared to somebody who didn't plan at all. At
least you have a structure.
At least there's a structure. We know, okay, if we disagree, what are we going to do?
Sure. Does this also involve sex in this business, in this proposal? Do we write there?
Sex is a serious business.
Is it 3 times a week in this business? And if someone does not fulfill this 3 times a week,
this is what happens.
Do we deal with, what do we do? Is HR available for?
Yeah, so you better make sure you sort that out. And remember, sex is such a taboo topic for many people, especially more the Christian people. It's not discussed, but then it has such a high
impact,
intense impact on any relationship. So those things should be addressed beforehand, and it should be made knowing that actually sex is not like a luxury in a marriage. It's actually like bathing or drinking water. But obviously
it's a lifestyle. It must flow. Flow like the water.
No, when I discuss this, the guys always have fun. Like, yeah, no, I get to say flow. Yeah.
It must be a breeze.
So the sex education is important. It's critical also, because sometimes as women we hold it back to punish you, because we understand that for a man it's a basic need, right? And then we're like, okay, I'm gonna punish him for these 2 weeks. Until so it's not, once we have like proper conversations and there's good understanding, you understand that you even if you don't agree on certain things, this is bigger than just you being upset and it goes, because there's spirituality involved in sex. So it shouldn't just be made to be like an act that we do casually like most of us would. It's actually a serious thing, because in marriage, if sex is done properly by 2 people who understand it's beyond their feelings, you actually experience God in that type of sex, because He is the creator of sex. It's just that sex, when it's used with the wrong person, wrong time, is always a terrible experience.
Yeah.
But if it's done at the right time with the right person, it's a spiritual experience.
That spiritual experience. I'm sure there's a married couple now. It's like, oh, my matey, my matey. This is more than just the physical. It's spiritual. Dr. Petla, I can speak to you for the entire show, because I'm sitting here just like everybody else, learning and so curious about these conversations that you should have before marriage, and marriage counseling, and the importance of marriage counseling. You're still going to be hanging out with us. When we come back after the break, we're going to chat to a young married couple, and we're going to hear how they deal with these different dynamics of this journey and this union that is called marriage. If you've got any questions, please send that voice note on the YFM app. I'm sure after that conversation, you're asking yourself this question: are you ready for marriage? It's the big one. All those answers are going to get answered by 9 p.m. Trust me, you'll know if you are ready or not. It's Lizzo with Am I Ready to Be Loved on White Unlocked Chats. We're talking about marriage and those very important conversations that you need to have before you get married. Earlier on, we spoke to Dr. Petla, who gave us sort of like a foundation and a background on marriage and marriage counseling. We're also joined by Tshwanelo Hsu, who is 28 years old, and Johnson Hsu, who is 29 years old. They define themselves, and this is interesting, as a Blasian couple because of their Black and Asian cultures. Interesting. They have been together for 7 years and married for 3 with 3 children. Couple. Good evening. How are you?
Good, we're good. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing, Johnson?
Good.
Good to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
How is it like being married? I just, let me start there. How is it like, because for me, one thing I can't wait for, and Doctor, I hope maybe this is a telltale sign. One thing I can't wait for is to call my partner now my wife. I'm tired of this girlfriend and partner thing. Even saying fiance kind of sounds like, hey, I'm fishing for compliments. So how is it like, in this marriage journey?
It's beautiful. To be honest, like the doctor was saying, you got to be intentional. So like in your state, I didn't want that. So that's why I proposed within 3 months of,
Nice.
Yeah. I was like, nobody else is going to have this. It's mine. Whether I'm ready or not, you're mine. I'm taking it.
Oh.
As of Jordan.
Did you guys have pre-marital counseling before you decided to be married?
No, but we were advised from our friends to do it. But we never took it as a necessity.
Is it?
Yeah.
And do you feel the need now that you've been married for some time? Are you going to marriage counseling?
No, we don't. And we don't see the need, honestly. We don't see the need.
Yeah.
I think we're good.
The thing is, we also feel like there's no one else better to tell you about your relationship than yourself.
Yeah.
If you can, talk to God about it, as that's the priority in our marriage. You got to put God first. Pray in your marriage. Pray about your marriage. Pray about your partner. Pray about yourself to be better for your marriage. Like the doctor was saying, you got to give it your best. It's a business. You got to make it work.
Yeah.
It's gonna happen by itself. Nobody else is going to tell you how the business is going to run. You know how the business works.
No.
You got to make it work.
Oh, a successful business that had no proposal at all. No business proposal. How are you going through the challenges in marriage? Because I'm sure there are, challenges in marriage. It's a roller coaster, this thing. So how are you, dealing with those disagreements, those challenges that you are faced with?
We have what we call a marriage update or marriage check every 3 months or 5 months, if we remember.
Yeah.
We'll sit down with each other and ask each other. I'll ask him, Johnson, are you still happy with me? Are you still happy in this marriage? And then he will check me on the things that I've been doing good and the things I've been doing bad. And he will remind me of the things I promised to change in the last update. And
Like the sex.
Like the flow of the water.
Exactly.
I think that's our type of marriage counseling. We go to each other to check if whether we're still on the right path.
Do you have any tools that you apply in your marriage that kind of assist you to keep going and keep that spark alive?
Yeah, we do. We read books. Right now I'm reading I don't remember the title. I think it's his wife, how to be a good wife, a praying mom, and a praying woman. So we read books, we read the Bible, we listen to podcasts, just to check where we are in our marriage. We don't really compare our marriage to other people, but we believe that it's good to look up to certain couples. There's certain good things that you can take from each couple. So we do that a lot.
Yeah, and for myself, what I can add on is, like Doc was also saying, it's a roller coaster. It's not going to be all sunshine and rainbow all the time. And when you hit rock bottom sometimes because you're stressed with work or you're stressed about your relationship because you're not agreeing on something. I think you got to self-evaluate during those times and just say, if I'm not going to give my best, am I not going to be forsaking my marriage? Rather, let me give my best so that I can make this thing work.
What are some of the most shocking discoveries that you came across in marriage that you didn't expect? A point where it was like, yo, Kati kunje.
The doctor just said that most of the things that we do in marriage, we expect, we see from our parents. So for me, just to give an example, when I was growing up, my father used to wash the shoes at home. Everyone's shoes. We knew that it's my dad's job. So when I got married, my husband was like, I remember when shopping, so we were buying white shoes, and then he's like to me, but who's gonna wash those shoes? And I'm like, you, of course. And then he says, no. And then I tell him that no, but at home my dad used to do it, But I guess I realized that not every husband is the same. Every person is different, every person is raised differently. So I had to detach myself from the things that my dad used to do at home and learn what things my husband is willing to do in our marriage. So I think that's one of the things I learned.
Yeah, also just to delve a little bit on our relationship, because I'm vegetarian, my wife is not. Going the relationship was really tough. Me growing up, like she was touching on, parents, you see how your parents operate when you're growing up. So my mom always cooked, like I can count maybe in my hand how many times we were out for dinner or lunch. So it was very few. So she'd cook lunch, supper, always. 24/7, 365 days.
And she had to adapt to that.
Which she didn't. So that's why I expected it to be done. And that's why it was a clash. So with that, it's like I was saying before, am I going to take it upon myself to learn how to cook as I'm vegetarian, or am I going to allow the kids to be, eating meat?
How important is that to come into the union of marriage with a clear mind and an open mind? Because you grew up like this, and a lot of men and women want to apply what they grew up doing or what they witnessed growing up to their current partners, and usually sometimes that's where the clash comes in, because I expect my wife to cook every evening. I expect my wife to cook samp and oxtail and all of these things. How important is it to really come into marriage with a clear, open mind? And for me, the most important thing based on my relationship is the willingness to become better and the willingness to do better.
Yeah, so like that will be your base, right? Looking at your parents, how they were. So that's what also sold me to my wife, because she comes from a family where, it was both parents in the family, they grew up together, and it was sort of like a standard, and for myself too. But, you gotta really notice that this is not the same as our relationship. Number one, we're totally different. My parents who grew up in Taiwan, they have a totally different structure of how they grew up. Same with her. And how we grew up is also very different. So we have to be open-minded in this relationship so that we can grow from one another. Or if we're stuck in our own way of thinking, the marriage would never work. Like if we're to do umsebenzi, I don't know how it would work. Because already, we don't do it in our culture. And never mind, we don't eat the meat as well. So it's going to, for her, it's going to take for her family, it's going to be on the fence. But at least we had a discussion before that, to accommodate for one another.
And how did your family welcome Johnson? Because obviously, as he says, there are certain cultural barriers that come into play, and Xhosa families, siyabazi banjani, Zulu and our African brothers and sisters, they've got their own standard way of doing things. How was the welcoming of Johnson into your family?
It wasn't really that difficult. For my dad, it was a bit, because he's cultural. He's very cultural. So I am Sotho. So I had to try and explain, because now the problem is that I couldn't explain the issue with my boyfriend, because African fathers don't want to know boyfriends, they want to meet husbands. So I had to try and speak to my mom, because my mom was a bit softer than. So I explained to my mom that no, my husband is aware that my boyfriend at the time is aware that he'll have to pay lobola, and he knows the processes, but how do we go about it? My mom took the issue to my dad in a smart way. I don't know how she spoke to him. How, as couples, how to speak to your man.
Yeah.
So she spoke to him about it. And my father was like, no, it's fine. If that's the man that she wants, that's the man she wants to marry, it's fine. We will welcome him as long as he makes our daughter happy. And then our families had to meet before he paid lobola, just so that they can discuss what we do in our culture and what they do in their culture. So my family really did welcome Thompson very well.
Oh, it sounds like an interesting journey. The entire process is just a learning process where you're learning different cultures. But I guess at the center of it all is this thing called love,
Yes.
because that's what brought you guys together. How do you have that difficult flow, like the water conversation? Do you just say, "Hey, baby, you haven't been doing the job"?
So, as you know, men are not really able to communicate. Or for myself, I can speak on men's behalf.
I'm with
We
you on
don't-
that
we don't
one,
really
brother.
Communicate, our communication is physical, so that's where we, let go.
Don't worry, this job mustn't fool you. Communicate.
So with that, I'll be moody and stuff like that, and then she'll
Yeah.
be wondering like what's going on. But if I never say anything, she'll still won't know what's going on. So eventually, at some point, you're gonna have to communicate it, and we have, during our relationship.
And now it's not a difficult conversation.
Yeah, it's much easier because we're playful. It's like
The signs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so much different. Like I'm saying, when you're dating, the sex then and the sex now during marriage. I think what was it last year or something like that when we were doing the shandies. Like I don't know, we laughed about something. I don't know if somebody
Wait.
we're in the wrong position or something. Like
You
it was
laughed during.
During. That's how nice it was. So you can see the difference. If we're still dating, now we must, kind of hide and like, I can't do anything funny. Next thing, this one gonna think I'm, a beast or something like that, Not that you shouldn't show your best side.
Yeah. Tell me, when you hear about marriage, there's always the toxic side of marriage. And I want us to talk about the beauty of marriage before we get into the tips that you want to share with us today. What do you appreciate the most about making that decision to say that I want to be married, I want to get into this journey? What is the beauty of marriage? Because I want people to understand that there is beauty in this union. There is beauty in marriage, and it's something that you can, do and do it right if you do it right. Right? What's the beauty and like I said, what you appreciate the most about making that decision?
Number one, first shout out to our parents. As much as we're talking about being open-minded, I think our parents were open-minded also for allowing us to have this union, But with that, marriage is a beautiful thing. I wouldn't encourage it for anyone and everyone because it's not for everyone. It is a difficult thing, but it's beautiful. And also it makes it much more easier when your partner is so beautiful. As you can see, it doesn't need makeup, I see makeup also doesn't, just a red lipstick will do. It makes it so much easier. As much as a guy, at some point the beauty dies because you're going to grow old together. But that's also the beauty of it. You grow old together and you enjoy all these memories that you created with one another.
It's just the best feeling when you when you are with the people you work with and you say, "There's my wife. Come, let me introduce you." She.
Yeah. But my last point is that I think it's so beautiful that I don't know if you've heard, but I've previously prayed for this type of woman. So from young, I don't know why, I've always also just wanted to be married. And I also always wanted a specific type of person. She met all the requirements,
Oh,
and
lovely.
so once I found it, I'm like, nah, I'm taking this home.
Lovely. Guys, we're running out of time. Quickly, let's hear the tips you brought in, tips to share with everyone who's listening who wants to get married, who's thinking about getting married. Please go ahead, share those tips from an experience perspective.
The doctors already touched on this one. It's very big for us as well. That marriage is for servers. If you're not ready to serve, do not even consider getting married because it's not going to work for you.
The second point, I think, is communication. Anything and everything has to be communicated. You got to find the right timing. You got to find the right place, the right approach. When we first got in our marriage, my wife, because she wasn't all about marriage, so I convinced her somehow, somewhere. I guess it was by the grace of God.
Yeah.
But she was
It's
always
that
the tough
prayer.
person. Yeah, it was that prayer. I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, she was always a tough person. She's a tough cookie, So with that, the way she approached me was, very strong, very hard. And I didn't understand it. So I had to communicate. I had to let her, calm down because she wants to get in it now. If we're hot, we're hot now. Whereas me,
She's me.
yeah. So me, I like to take my time, like understand why you're coming. Or
Yeah.
why is this happening, and maybe I can come back to you the next day. And she doesn't want to go to bed until it's resolved. That type of thing. So communication, but with the right approach, right time.
Yeah. Oh, lovely. Love it. Okay, I'm going to, before I let you go, Doctor, I want you to come in here as well. I'm going to just, say a little, just ask questions, statements, and I want to hear your thoughts with regards to these statements and just need some clarity with regards to them, right? What is a healthy way of arguing in a marriage?
I guess the best way is to understand that you're talking to another human being who has a mind and emotions of their own. So you want to you should be able to talk, and they should also be able to respond. And if you are in a state that you feel like, I'm not ready, if I were to speak now, I'll explode or I'll say something that won't necessarily build long term, be able to say, can you just give me some time? I hear what you're saying, but give me some time. Let me just think over this, sleep over this, then we'll get back on this topic tomorrow or whenever. Or maybe not now because we're in front of people, can we discuss this later? Because that also determines the health of your relationship. You should be able to say, can we take a break and come back? If it's manageable, you discuss openly, give each other a chance, be able to listen to each other because everybody has a different perspective. But then always go back to, okay, what are we doing? So you vented out. I have vented out. I didn't understand what you meant, but now I get it. It wasn't my intention, but you interpreted it this way. Okay, but this is what I actually meant. If you're reading the wrong, say here, I'm sorry, I didn't, it wasn't intentional. So be able to also apologize if you have to, or explain if you need to explain. But eventually be in a space where eventually there's that communication. So, because once you're in a place where you cannot be honest to say to, but I'm not comfortable, I'm not happy, then it's not healthy because then you're gonna hold that grudge, it's gonna go into something very monstrous, then it's gonna break out at some point.
That bottling of issues. And I'm sure that by that you don't mean when we say go sleep, let me think about it, let me sleep it out. Doesn't mean that I must go sleep in a separate room and you sleep in a separate room.
Of course. So that's where the maturity comes in. Remember the business plan to say from the start. To try to be mature, just like at work, if you're unhappy, something happens that you don't like, you don't necessarily just blow out. Okay, this is my boss, or these are my
You still show up.
You show up, pretend, you give that smile. Even though you don't, it's part of maturity, smile, suck it in. And then when the time is right, you can discuss this or raise it with the right person at the right time. So that is being totally childish and not being part of the plan or the vision, unless if the vision was not discussed in the first place, then no one is working towards any target. Because if you're willing to, just because you're upset, sleep in another room, or you leave the house, and now because you left because you're angry, you don't answer the phone, then you're not accountable. Then unfortunately, it's not a healthy one. Because if you mean it, you sit down. Even if you're not happy, you stay in the house. But most guys and some ladies maybe, when they're not happy, they leave the house, nice excuse, I'm upset, I'm not going to talk to you now. You hate me or you upset me, I'll see you on Monday morning. This is Friday. So now they're going to vent out some way. And it's fun over the weekend.
Yeah.
They come back Monday, he's angry from scratch. So obviously something like that is not healthy.
And they say that that is their happy place. I'm at my happy place and home was not my happy place.
Yep, you need to mature from that at some point.
Whew. All right, it's 9 p.m. Guys, thank you so much. Could go on and on and on. It's such a pleasure to have you on Unlocked and getting to discuss such an important conversation. Lastly, if people want to get a hold of you, Doctor, where can they follow you if they want to come for marriage counseling?
The best place is my website, www.drbspeaks, so DRBB speaks with an S, .co.za. All my socials are also there.
All right, nice one. Johnson, Tshwanelo?
So my wife is the social media person, but you can catch us on at Blasian Hsu, so BLASIANHSU on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. Yeah. Shout out to everyone who's been following and liking.
Nice.
We just hit 1 million views on TikTok.
Oh man. That's amazing. Congratulations, guys. And yeah, again, congratulations on your marriage and on the journey that you're taking. May God continue to bless your journey. And you always have a place here if you want to talk about anything. I'm here. That's how we wrap it up. Coming up next.